thank you for this introduction. Good morning to everybody. I'm really excited, and it's really a pleasure to present in front of such a vibrant and dynamic community as the Python community is. And I have to admit, I became a Python fan several years ago, and let's say, before I continue with that, and this is maybe a little bit part of the presentation, which is also a very personal perspective, I have to admit, so it's maybe, let's say, not a purely academic approach, but I just wanted to share some ideas. And when Eve asked me a while ago, Felix, would you like to present to the PyData in London? It's, you still have time to prepare a presentation, no worries. And I immediately said yes. And then 24 hours, I thought, oh, Felix, what have you done? You have no idea what to talk about. Huh? So, well, I hope that it's, I can give you maybe some insights. And it's for me, it's more a discussion template, if you want. I'm not yet having in my mind all the solutions, but I believe that, let's say, Python has a great potential in the industry. And let's say, especially in the perspective I'm having now in my current role at Deutsche Börse Group, I'm convinced that we can take a lot out of it. So, few seconds about myself. I started with Deutsche Börse Group in 1992. So, let's say, from that perspective, I'm already a dinosaur, and still not extinct, but working on it. And let's say that I was not only there, yeah. So I had the pleasure to work also with also on the other side of the fence, and also looking at the exchange or at the marketplace from a customer side. And I worked several years for a Swiss hedge fund. So I learned, let's say, from both perspectives. And then I returned in 2006. And yeah, let's say basically there seems to be there seems to be somehow a pattern that you're always returning to the place of crime. Yeah? So I was not able to fully, let's say, leave this company. So the idea of today is to give you a perspective on what I think is a great potential for Python. And I recap a little bit the abstract, which all of you know, but just to give you a little bit of background how I came to it. So what I'm facing myself, and this is basically a reflection of my own experience, is we have a financial industry which is evolving in an increasing pace. And also, when I look at my colleagues who are taking care of our data warehouse, let's say the factor let's say of growth that we can observe in data is tremendous. Yeah? So when we plan to have a current project which is called Prisma, which is a portfolio-based risk margining system, and just to give you a flavor, I mean, when we started the planning and the first, if you want, modeling of the system, let's say we thought about a certain dimension of data, a certain amount of data, and nowadays it's 18 times larger than the projected one. And this is probably not the end. It will become more. Yeah? So I think that this is one of the dimensions we have to deal with. Something which it's a nuisance sometimes, but we are living in this, let's say, regulatory environment. So regulatory requirements, some of you may know, have some, let's say, typically unexpected effects. Yeah? So yeah, you don't have too much time to prepare for it. And sometimes you may ask yourself, does it make sense? But you don't have any chance to change it. You just have to accept it. So the let's say, desire of regulators to look into the marketplace, understand the intrinsics of marketplace, especially risk dimensions, is key. Time to market of services and cost efficiency. Well, this is something which is not always a nice exercise, because sometimes you are forced, especially in my current role, I'm responsible as a business CIO for the cash and derivatives IT. Just a second on that. I mean, just to give you a flavor of the dimension, we have roughly 500 people working there, and let's say my teams are responsible for everything which has to do with trading, so cash and derivatives trading, with clearing, risk management, and data warehouse, which are the core components. And typically you have a relatively long life cycle of these applications. So we are talking here more in dimensions of, let's say, 2-digit numbers of years. So these applications or systems and applications tend to stay for a while. And cost efficiency and time to market is something which contradicts sometimes. So in the past we tried, and I think this is just due to the fact that exchanges are typically companies with deep pockets, at least in the past. Nowadays this has changed quite a bit. And also, you know, in the past we could maybe buy the time to market. So just throw enough money into a project and you will meet the deadline. This is not functioning anymore because we don't have the money anymore. We don't have these immense budgets, yeah, for spending 2- or 3-digit million figures in system development and then operating them for whatever 10, 15 years or so. Cost efficiency. The first reaction, which comes from management, and this is sometimes what I'm not sharing always with my colleagues, is the perspective of, oh, cost efficiency means we have to find cheaper hands. And I'm saying, no, guys. You can have cheaper hands in some cases, but typically there's a price attached. So for all of you who made experience with outsourcing projects, it's in theory it works nice, but if you look at the end-to-end cost perspective, so you have more friction, you need more quality insurance structures, you need more service level agreements, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of friction around it. So if you compare especially when you look about the, let's say, whole application life cycle, when you look end-to-end, let's say the benefits of outsourcing are then not always materializing in the way you expect it. Yeah? So I think that this is also one dimension. So for me, the question is, what can we do? What can we do else? So for me, it's in the mind, it's like, let's say, operating a factory. And in the same fashion that you are operating a factory, the question is not necessarily what you do, the question is how you do it. And also in terms of industrialization, I think that in some areas of IT, our, let's say, industrialization level is quite high. In other areas, it's quite poor. So we're still, let's say, in this manual working approach where you produce the car piece by piece, and basically you're basically doing the chassis by hand, yeah, on wooden frames. The second, if you want, domain is we have a massive shift from monolithic architectures. So I spoke with one of my colleagues who was there for many, many years, and he said, you know what, in the past, many things were easier. Yeah? So you had somehow a closed environment, and everything was in there. You don't have to deal with too many products, with too many standards, too many languages. You just had COBOL, OpenVMS, and somehow you built everything yourself. Which was fine, because you know everything, and these teams were very proud of developing functionality was not there. But this nowadays is simply not possible anymore. And also, it's a matter of lifetime or life cycle that we have to decommission our existing OpenVMS systems. What happened then is somehow, let's say that we are shifting to a heterogeneous stack and systems. In this case, Linux, Java, SQL, which is, and Python is missing there, but I mean the point is that we are moving, yeah, to a far more complex world. So we have to deal with complexity, and this creates a significant challenge for IT. And what do we do typically? Well, if we have one monolithic system that is a closed box and it does not do everything we would like to, well, we add another box which is different, and then we plug it together. Now, when you look at our, and I haven't dared to bring a map of our systems here, probably my board would kill me. It's just an enormous amount of systems that we have. Yeah? So over the time, over the years, this has grown. Yes, we have many, many systems which are niche systems, connecting systems. They do specific things. They have been developed with one methodology, another methodology, another methodology. They somehow function, but the whole process gets terribly complex. And one thing that I have experienced myself, and this is maybe here the latter part, what I called here the empowerment of the business analysts, or technology empowerment of the business analysts. Well, nowadays technology does not end in IT operations. It starts already when people are creating their first ideas. And what I will dive later a little bit deeper into it is how can we manage that? And also I wanted to reflect a little bit about the experience, and I mean, Yves said it nicely, that let's say we started with Python at Deutsche Börse Group several years ago, and I wanted to share our experience, what, let's say, we have observed, and the potential for Python as a universal, this was then basically the title of the presentation, universal tool for end-to-end development. So very briefly about the agenda. I wanted to give you a quick overview about Deutsche Börse Group. One experience I'm making regularly when I'm coming to London and I'm let's say checking in the hotel, and then they ask me, what was the company name? Deutsche Bank? Yeah, so Deutsche Börse is not known, yeah, in so far, or surprisingly, let's say, it's surprising how, in how many cases people say, Deutsche Börse, what is that? Then a little bit of history of Python within Deutsche Börse Group. For me, again, not maybe a pure academic approach, but just, let's say, poking into the Python universe and trying to understand myself, where are we there? And then maybe the part which bothers me most, and which is for me the most interesting thing in our own application environment, is the potential of Python in the software factory. Well, and then somehow looking forward where we can go. So very briefly, say from top left to bottom left, so it's this circle here. Let's say the tradition of the exchange in Frankfurt is quite old. I mean, it goes far beyond 1820, but 1820 was, let's say, the first share traded in Frankfurt. So, and let's say you see then several years afterwards, this building was built, which is the exchange building. It's looking different today, but let's say it is still the same building. Yeah? So you see that it's very spacious, it's luxurious, it's just like a more Italian palace maybe than anything else. You would not expect a marketplace there. And this is then 1914. Within the building, this was basically a reunion of the exchange members. And let's say then later on, you see here in 1960, this was basically a trading meeting for forex contracts, yeah, in 1960s. In 1969, there was somehow a break, if we want, with technology, or not a break. It was basically a disruption which technology started, which was, I didn't found the right picture. I just take one which, let's say, was close to it. Is basically that you had the first chance to enter orders and enter trades electronically. So this was a change of paradigm. And then, and this was for me amazing, the pace in which things are changing. And this is floor trading, so still deeply active here in the 80s in Frankfurt. So this is let's say a small picture here of the old trading floor. In '97, we started then with the first electronic trading system for the cash market, and this is today. So there are no humans anymore. Yeah. So this is at least not in the box. So what is today? I mean, if you go to our office building, and I don't want to put a picture there. I mean, you can see it in the internet. It's just one building like many of those, so nothing special. So where is the market? Where's the beef? Yeah, so it's here. It's in the data center. We have several data centers for protection and failover, but basically when I have visited our data center a few months ago, and to be honest, it was quite boring. I mean, the guys from the data center, they're quite happy when they can show you the large racks, and the cooling systems, especially the cooling systems, were fantastic. I don't know how much power is in there, but at least I understood that if they would put you into this cooling system, you would freeze within seconds. Yeah. So, and it's incredible that you're running there this let's say box, if you want, of machines, and the point is that our members basically connect to it, so they do the same. Yeah, so let's say what happens is that nowadays trading in the market is far more driven by quants than maybe 20 years ago. Yeah? And you have software engineers, you have network specialists. You are talking about squeezing out the last nanoseconds. So we are not talking, and especially when you look at the HFT. So especially when you look at the latest developments, where our members are heavily investing in FPGAs and things like that. So really to squeeze out the last bit of speed to be ahead of the market and react in this incredibly short time to market events. Also briefly, what we are doing, just to give you a rough perspective. I think what is important to understand is Deutsche Börse has one strategic advantage which differentiated from others, is that we have the end-to-end value chain. So really from trading, clearing, risk management, we have derivatives, we have cash, settlement, collateral management, market data, we own indices, and we have let's say a large technology section within Deutsche Börse. So overall, IT has approximately 1,300 employees. Yeah, so it's not that small. And also we are operating a large network, which many maybe don't know, but it's already huge. I mean, we are let's say in many, at least in all financial centers, but also worldwide, we are connected even to the Virgin Islands, yeah? So, or Cayman Islands. The point is that we have where there's a member. So paradigm is where a member is, we want to connect him. Yeah? So this was the paradigm, or it still is the paradigm, and this sounds, well, it's okay. I mean, 420 participants is not that much. The reason is that typically exchanges tend to go to the professionals. Yeah? So let's say all the firms here around, the large banks and investment firms, they are trading us, but it's not retail typically. Yeah? So we are not having we don't need so many clients. In brackets don't need. And also, business is quite focused, to be honest, Europe. Most of our business is coming from Europe, especially London. Some business out of the States, in some products even significant business, and then let's say further reaching in the Asian time zone, and there this is a different dimension to really become a successful player in this region here. You have to do different things. So the markets are far more protected than they are, for example, in Europe. So you need to establish corporations. Establish, let's say, if you want, market links, different things than, let's say, purely connecting members to trade your products. I don't know if you know these charts. Typically they are quite public, but I thought it would be interesting to see, let's say, what happens here in our markets. So the blue line here is the number of transactions. I think the resolution. It's intra-month, yeah. So I don't know if it's daily, but at least this is, let's say, a very good or good, let's say, perspective. But important is the red line, yeah. So this is the average response time of the system, and response time is round trip, yeah. So you are sending an order into the system, and the system is telling you, okay, I processed the order, yeah. So and you see here a dramatic decrease. This is Eurex, so this is the derivatives trading system. So what is important to see that, let's say, we had a dramatic decrease here in response time, and this is due to the new technology that we introduced. So up to here, this was our old VMS system, and here we introduced our new Linux-based system, which, let's say, it's worked on a distributed architecture and far more scalable. And as you can see here, yeah, we have around about at 200 microseconds round trip time. This is our cash market system, which is doing fairly well, even though let's say the number of transactions is typically slightly lower, but not that much, except in peaks. And this is a different dimension which you don't see necessarily. But let's say here, what you see, it's relatively stable around 1 millisecond. And this is basically the state of today. Now you may ask, well, 1 millisecond, is fair enough. The point is that markets today are looking for arbitrage. So the point is when an engine, an algo engine, sends an order or looks for interest into a market, they're sending then for example, an immediate or cancel order to different markets. Then basically, if you are not executing this order in the fraction of a second, then the order is not getting to you. Yeah? So the markets are going for let's say speed optimization. They're trying to find the best opportunities also between markets and also in terms to optimize their strategies. So quick history of Python within Deutsche Börse. This is a personal perspective. Basically, it starts here. So for me, when the first thing which let's say brought me to Python was basically this year, the SEC proposal for issues of asset-backed securities in 2010, where they proposed that let's say the models of these securities would be documented not only in paper but also in executable Python code. And this struck me. So I said, why they are doing that? So what is the rationale behind it? And I started digging a little bit. And interesting-wise, there was some rumor around this. There were some firms which are well known, which are producing also financial engineering, let's say, workbenches, which wrote large letters to the SEC. They are, by the way, public, so you can look it up yourself on the SEC website. And let's say basically criticizing that the SEC was doing something crazy, like basically two things. First, to saying you have to use one language, and second, to say, oh, you go for open source. Yeah? We have no support, no documentation. You're completely, let's say, at your own. Yeah? I don't think that I have to convert you here. So I think it's very clear that this is it seems to be a model that worked. Yeah? So then I was moving forward, and we started then in 2010, and I was then already a while active and responsible for the Eurex pricing strategy, which is far more analytics as you may think about. And we all tried everything. So we tried all the tools. I can basically, starting with MATLAB, with R, Mathematica. We even tried a few things doing in C#, and so on and so forth. So we tried a plethora of tools. And in every dimension, we somewhere, sooner or later, came to a point where we say, well, it's not really doing everything what we want. So it was quite a time where we say, okay, what do we do here? And this is when we basically developed in 2010, or we started then with this incident here. We started in 2010 to try Python. And I have to say it was, let's say, a fantastic success. And thank you to Yves, yeah, who supported us very much in this venture. We are still using it today, and with more and more and more, let's say, enthusiasm and use, I think, for the firm. Also together with Yves, we developed here a project. I will show you some slides as well. I mean, you know them for those who attended yesterday Yves' presentation about VSTOXX valuation models based on, let's say, a web interface. We'll come to this in a minute. And today, I'm focusing more on the factory perspective here. So, for example, one of the projects I'm currently looking at is Python for tool consolidation in the data warehouse. And we'll come to this in a minute in order not to be too preemptive. So, and then 2014 for me is the year where I'm saying more to come. And the question why I started here is that I discovered this a few weeks ago. So basically, when just walking around the organization and saying, hey guys, I'm trying to find out who is using Python in the company, I found out that there is a massive use of Python in our development already. So it's not only used, well, it's basically used as a glue language, but also as an automation language and so on and so forth. So just very briefly, in our, let's say, especially this is our latest greatest system here, called T7, Trading 7. You may ask why 7? It's not 8, it's not a lucky number. But our marketing specialist said that 7 is a good number for whatever reasons. Yeah, so it's called T7, and it's short. Yeah, and I think that the Germans, for those who like Audi, I think Germans have a tendency to this combination. So one letter, one number, or so. So it seems to be a German attitude. Okay, I don't have to spend too much time here. You see that we are somehow more or less across the board have an intensive usage of open source technology. This is a very involved slide, but I just I used the original slide, which is a presentation from the development team they made a while ago, and I was surprised basically what they did so far, and they have developed their own Python framework, which is called OSCAR, so Optimized Scripting Architecture. For those who may ask, what is Optimize? Well, this is the project name was the project name for T7 in the early stages, which has been introduced for one of our subsidiaries, which is the ISE in New York, which basically they introduced. There was the first introduction of this new technology or new trading system, and OSCAR is basically used in the background for many things, especially for testing. And what they did is to say, you know what, I mean, to test such a system, which is quite complex, you have, let's say, a lot of functionality in there, you have to deal with many issues and so on and so forth. Latency is a point. So they said, how can we automate this? So they built, like a framework of tools. Yeah? So for example, what I found interesting, what they called D2G, which is a data-driven script generator. And what it does, it talks with the system interfaces. Yeah? So it just sends, if you want, messages to the system interfaces. And the point is that you have typical test cases you want to do. Yeah? So sending a certain order type, awaiting the response, or what the system is doing, entering data, and so on and so forth. So basically, in order to test it, you can see here that there are over 5.5K test cases, and the steps of these tests are quite complex. And what they use in order to make it easy to maintain is basically using a spreadsheet where all the test cases are defined, and then use, let's say, the SpyUno macro language interface to call it via Python. So one application, again, typical Python application, again, building on existing frameworks, extending, leveraging existing frameworks, and interfacing to the market. And then here, other things like AutoPad, our automated performance tester, tools for operations, this OpCon, which is a major process console, which is again built on the OSCAR framework. So again, here it's also building, you can very nicely, I don't have to tell you that, it's basically framework on framework and nicely reuse functionality which people developed already. I don't want to bother you too much with pricing, but I thought it would be interesting to give you a flavor why we came to Python. Now, in a nutshell, Eurex pricing is not well fitted for a spreadsheet. So this has been done in the past in trying to model to model pricing in a spreadsheet. And you may ask, well, why the hell you have to model that? Well, the reason for that is that it's relatively complex. And I mean, we probably could spend an hour talking about the pricing of Eurex, but just very briefly, you can see it's very involved. Yeah? So we have a complex logic. You have volume rebates for those who are providing volume. You have market maker rebates, different schemes, different products. So you have a plethora of products. You have many, many contracts per day you have to deal with. And you need to monitor carefully, especially what your market makers are doing. So why are market makers so important? Market makers are those who are providing prices for the screen. Yeah? So this is what you need in such an electronic market, that you can continuously see there is something there, something where you can trade on. Yeah? And these guys, as they are having significant effort in doing that, so it's not only technology, they have to understand the market, they are taking risks. So market maker firms, I don't have to tell you, especially in London, have a long tradition. So typically there are two spots where you find the top market makers, which is either Amsterdam or London, or the other way around. And of course, other things like etc. pricing, clearing pricing, connectivity pricing, which comes all on top. So we heavily used Python for modeling and analyzing pricing. And just to let's say, just in examples, what I found are quite, if you want, representative of the logic is, first thing is deal with large of data. And I think this is one of my former colleagues who's, I may have to say, he's a mathematician and he programs very nicely. Yeah? So he always documents everything. So therefore I took his code. Yeah? So maybe it's not representative. Yeah, but you see here, very nicely documented. And he describes exactly what he's doing. Yeah? And I find it funny, yeah, that we say basically we use HDF here, yeah, for which intensive use of pandas and HDF, and that even, let's say, 10 million records is just a snap. Yeah? So deal with it. It's very fast, yeah, and it's very efficient. And here it's just one fraction of volume calculation. You see here the complexity that you have to see when you want to understand what happens. So maybe one word about that. Pricing is not so interesting about, let's say, what happens today. Yeah? This everyone knows. You can just look it up. The question with pricing is what will happen tomorrow if you change something. Yeah? So, and then for that you have to understand very good what you're doing to the market. So will they change their behavior if you change something? And if they do, will this go into the positive or a negative direction? Or in many cases, when our discussions we had with the large HFT firms where they were saying, hey guys, look into this contract, you are too expensive, we are doing so many millions of contracts a month, and so on and so forth, and if you're not trading here, we're going to trade the whatever, S&P 500 or any other contract. So you're ongoing, let's say, confronted with requirements of saying, can we do something? And with all this complexity, you can't really do it on working on averages or doing assumptions. You have to model it completely. So what we did is we established a very large modeling framework where we are capable of basically modeling a variety of pricing scenarios, using also Monte Carlo simulation and other things. And this is maybe not the nicest charts, which is not always, so we don't need too often many fancy 3D charts and so on and so forth, but this is more to give you a flavor. I removed here the member names, yeah, but you see here the different products, which is, this is the FDAX, this is the Eurostox, and to see the impacts here on the rebate per contract in cent for one of the pricing proposals that were in discussion. So 20 minutes ago, that's good. So one thing you may know already, but I just wanted to iterate it for those who don't. This is one, let's say, the next initiative we did with Python and with support from Eve, which was also from, let's say, a sales marketing perspective of saying, how can we open the doors to our products? I mean, trading, the point is that trading an outright, let's say, whatever equity option is nowadays not that sexy, yeah? Or trading an index future. I mean, there's no rocket science behind it. And the question was, when we develop, or along the development of more complex products, so volatility products, dividend-based products, whatever, let's say, our product developers come up with, the typical approach was, well, first we talk to those guys who already know the game. And even if let's say, we have this community of 8,000 traders, you would be surprised how, let's say, how small the number is of those who are trading these niche products. Yeah? And then typically there are these guys who know this product from every dimension, and they are then market makers or whatever. But the point is we wanted to open the door for more. So for people who are interested in this product, so basically saying, creating one spot where you find everything. Yeah? So you start with data, you have the knowledge behind it, and then finally you have your Python code where you can just take it away, play with it, and basically do your own research and do your own modeling. Yeah? So this is, if you want, the first initiative in this regard we started. And this is one of the screenshots here from our web interface. You will find then the links everywhere there. So this is a backtester where it's maybe, let's say, maybe a simplified perspective, but it's already, let's say, showing for a part, or at least specific groups in our community, and also looking beyond our membership, so typically buy side and other groups of interest, let's say, what the effect of such a volatility future would add to a portfolio. And there you see here, this is the volatility future. This is the index, and this is basically the combination. And you can play around and do this interactively. So very nice. Basically all done in Python. Applications within the data warehouse, without going too much into detail, just to give you also a flavor of this is still work in progress, where we're coming from, and where I'd like to end or go. So we are coming from also here relatively, let's say, if you want monolithic components, it's heavily based on demand and SQL also to the customer. Yeah? So the typical format of our data warehouse today is large processing chunks. You have to do, let's say, very timely controlled batches, and so on and so forth. And the customer, be it internal, be it external, typically calls or sends an email and says, oh, I need this data and that type of data, can you do this analysis, and so on and so forth. These are the different areas where I believe we can add value. So one thing is the context here of the Python interface to the customer. So let's say import statistics. So somehow have a library where you can easily say get data, and I think all of you know other examples in the market, Quandl, for example. So something where you just plug in, call this library, and you are there. And you can call the data, consume them, and work with them. And this in a very unobtrusive way. Automation, again, we can do more there. And also the consumption here. So how can customers work with it? IPython as one example, be the IPython notebook or other services which could work on the spaces. And especially here, it's a little bit cleaning up. So we have a long history of, as I told you before, of complex heterogeneous systems, so many languages, many tools, and so on and so forth. And this is one of the things we want to strive for. Instead of having one guy who knows the Perl part of the applications, the other one who knows whatever, PHP, the other one knows, and so on and so forth. So basically, it's creating synergies by leveraging the people and saying, hey, just use one convenient framework and just one convenient, let's say, language that is powerful enough to do everything. So be careful here, not running out of time. So very briefly, because I think most of you know this, for me it was just surprising to see how successful Python is here in popular websites. So just dragging here some statistics from the web. So not only small or interesting wise, not rather the small websites, but rather the large. So larger websites are using obviously Python popular. Python is popular there, and we have here, of course, let's say the standard frameworks which can be used for that. Also for me, interesting was to say, okay, how is the development from, let's say, a developer perspective, and saying what happens there in the market. And I find it quite interesting that without too much fuss here, but this is Python, and it's doing quite well. And it's let's say, has a tendency to increase, whether the other languages coming from, of course, a much higher level are decreasing here. Also, looking at the repository here, PyPy, what was interesting for me is to see that we have, this is what interests me most, let's say financial insurance and science and research. And there is an incredible large number of packages already there, so that you can find for your solutions, and this is very important, especially when you have this paradigm of, let's say, not having a closed shop software, instead using open source, that you have sufficient, if you want, sufficient momentum behind it, and you find a solution for the challenges you are faced. Also, some interesting statistic here from OLO statistics, seeing here the number of contributors, and you see here the dark velvet line is Python, so Python is doing quite well there. It's increasing as well, and also the number of projects, obviously, for whatever the spike here is, seems to increase, while the other are quite stable. So again, Python is doing well here. Yeah? So also from that perspective. And also a little bit the, let's say, somehow it's a list of libraries where not all of them, but most of them we are already using. And let's say the nice thing here is that it allows from simple things, let's say solutions to quite complex financial applications. And this is where I believe is the main power of Python and the existing frameworks. It allows you exactly that. Yeah, and this is why this is relevant. We're coming to a minute, which is basically the core here of the presentation. So why does it bother? So why should I bother? Why should a software factory bother about the language? So the point is that it's important to have the right tool set. And here the point is productivity efficiency. I already mentioned this. Yeah? So having a language which fits everything or almost everything is simply a very good solution. You can, if you use it early, you have this benefit of testing and failing fast. It's multi-platform. I don't care where it runs. Time to market. So if I have a short learning curve, yeah, this is beneficial because I can more easily, let's say, allocate people to a specific domain and a specific challenge, and I can focus on the task, and I don't have long training and learning sessions. Iterative approach is a massive benefit, especially when you are in an R&D mode, and we are a part of it in R&D mode. So not everything is just straightforward programming. And of course, let's say the rich frameworks which are around. And then maintaining the degrees of freedom. One of the strategic decisions that Deutsche Börse made, which is quite substantial, is a massive move from vendor lock-in to open source. And the reason for that is that with vendor lock-in, this only makes sense if the vendor is always ahead of you. So implicitly, this means that I'm buying a framework, a software framework, I'm paying for a software framework, but let's say per definition, I'm only using a fraction of it. Because once I'm getting to the border or the barriers of this framework, I'm having a problem. I don't own it. I have no degrees of freedom to change it. And also for me, the change in paradigm, it somehow made click in my brain a few years ago, and I said, hey, why the hell should I pay for expensive licenses if I can invest in people? And so also this investment in people, I believe, is much more valuable and it's much more scalable than investing in software licenses. I think I have my 10 minutes warning ahead, so let's go on. So I can skip this one. This is stolen from Eve, but I mean, why Python? Yeah, so I think this is nothing new. Very briefly on the value chain. So this is a traditional value chain, and today we are very good here. So we are using already model-driven software development. So the developers here and operations here are quite well interlinked. Yeah? So I don't see a problem here. But we have problems on this function here. So where the IT faces basically the business. So this is the area where specifications are written, where if you want the production process starts, and this is the area where the ideas are generated. Yeah? And you see here, we'll still have some systemic breaks there. They will produce a lot of paper. We have long review cycles, so large documents you have to read. And then when I ask people, hey, your model is not consistent, document it states 99% probability, and in your model you have 99.5% probability, and the answer is, well, yeah, I didn't find the right chart, so I don't know how to update that. Yeah, so I think this is simply not state of the art. So where I want to go is to have at least for some, if you want, problem domains, a Python development framework, which goes end to end, reaches out to business, and is capable of running in production, and basically comes bottom up. Yeah, this is important. So, and this is something, I'll say, at least, I think the quote I stole from Yves, from one of the presentations he gave in our house in November, I think, because I still think that there is potential. The point is, if you have such a framework, you can easily extend it to the market. So again, import statistics. So why not offering, so import whatever, Deutsche Börse interface, yeah? So, or Eurex. So the point is, why not offer something what the market can consume, what is, let's say, if you want, is one framework and let's say is supported by one very active community. And yes, you still have areas where where you need your specific tools and you will not change the world in one day or another, but at least it creates potential. It creates for this popularization. So saying, let's say something which is, let's say, more used, which is liked, where people are happy to involve with it. And this is the, if you want, the area of new members, of new people who would be interested in using that. So almost on the spot. This is the end. No, it's not. So there is no holy grail. Yeah. So when let's say you may say, well, okay, this sounds nice, and you throw all your software away and do everything in Python. No, of course not. But it can do a lot. So it's not the holy grail, but it's rather that. Yeah. So it's useful. It's multi-paradigm. It's flexible. You can do almost everything with it. And it fits in so many niches that simply by definition, it helps you to solve problems where you would have no immediate solution right away. And I don't have to convince you. I mean, it's also fun. Yeah? I mean, there are not so many languages. It's like speaking a language or learning a language. Maybe you have a tendency to learn those languages where you feel more comfortable. And I think that Python is one of those. So to end my presentation and leave at least some 5 minutes for questions to keep the schedule. So basically making the whole round back. So to the start, the universal tool for end-to-end development. So Python is a good basis. It can help us to solve many challenges we're having today in the financial industry. Not necessarily limited to do it, but let's say this is my perspective. This multi-purpose paradigm is valuable, so it's not doing a bad job in all these areas. It's maybe not the specialized one, and yes, in some cases you need some microseconds to take out, but I think that, let's say, this is also, let's say, this is solvable. And it creates synergies, and this is for me most important when I see the different teams are thinking on the same grounds, that they are starting to reuse knowledge and to talk about this. Readability, what I meant before with the language, it somehow fits the brain. It's fun to work, and I'm fascinated about this community and how fast it evolved in the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years. I think this is covered by 4, so frameworks are there. And for me, this is somehow the vision I'm having, is this end-to-end usage. So starting on the quant side, and this is, of course, tailored now for the financial industry, across basically the whole IT value chain down to the operation of these systems, and basically way back, so providing data back, to providing services and value back into this, let's say, into this community. So my final statement today is, and this I think it's also an important signal. Deutsche Börse has included Python in its technology stack. So in our IT roadmap, where we defined, let's say, the technologies for the next, whatever, 5 to 10 years. I don't know how long such a technology roadmap stands, but at least it has the aim to stay for longer. And we will definitely use it as a really integration technology and end to end. And this is basically the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi.
You've talked about the PyPy server, and so the PyPy packages are not digitally signed. How do you address the security problems that come by using them?
It's a good question. The point is, we cannot just use the software straight away. We have to look very carefully where we use it. So if we use it for internal purposes, I'm not bothering too much. From the point onwards, we would use something for our members, probably would have to shield that and spend more time in protecting it. And also there is liability involved. So we have, as a market operator, we have a role of let's say, and this is defined in Germany at least by public law. So you have to guarantee that, let's say, what you're doing is functioning. Also, regulators looking very much at it. So we would have to take care of shielding basically the loopholes which are in the used packages. Indeed.
Thank you.
You have mentioned PyUno as your implementation for Python. Is it for metaprogramming in Python?
No, my understanding is that the developers use it as the driver between the spreadsheet and our own implementation, our own OSCAR. So the OSCAR is the testing environment, and basically this is the interface, so that we can just use a spreadsheet as an input. Yeah.
I'll just speak up. So you mentioned that you'd like to, or it's an interesting goal to extend Python usage to outside clients of your business. Have you done any research into or like thought about training and how feasible it is to move people in the city away from spreadsheets and towards actually programming basic things in languages? Is that something that you're looking into? Or?
Yeah, we have. This is a challenging task, and I have to admit that this is maybe the same thing. Like it's not the holy grail. Yeah, so a lot of people and users still use their environment they like, and which is typically heavily spreadsheet based. I think it comes a little bit with. I would say the other way around. I don't have to convert them. They will, let's say, typically convert themselves when you encounter a problem you cannot manage anymore. So I see that, let's say, when you deal with these, let's say, large amount of data, so let's say the pricing analysts, for example, and also the guys who are developing our risk models, I mean, they have to deal with millions of data records. You can't do that anymore. Yeah.
If I may make a comment on
the
last question.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a gratuitous use of spreadsheets in finance. I put my grocery list in Excel. But I think there's actually a very rich tool chain available in Python for managing spreadsheets. If you look up Data Nitro, there's a technology called Data Nitro and Voyage that will allow you to dramatically simplify the operational side of actually managing spreadsheets. You can embed Python and Excel as opposed to using VBA and other technologies like that.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, I think that we can. Oh, there is one. Okay.
Sorry. Do you use Python on the high performance side of your business? Let's say if there is any limit to, let's say, Python speed or something like this, do you refactor code to any other language or something like this?
Well, for the time being, we don't use Python in our, let's say, low latency environment. So this is hand-tuned C code typically, and we are there. We are trying to exploit, if you want, the last bits of using the right compiler, using the right operation system version, and so on and so forth, and the right libraries in there. So it's not there. But the point is, it's not everything is low latency. Yeah? So again, I mean, for some areas you have, let's say, the right solutions, but in some areas where you don't need that, and when you look at the development time or the budget you are investing, I'm surprised when you look at an IT project end to end. You are typically spending a significant proportion of the budget of the project in the early phases. Yeah? So designing it and thinking about the content. So if you really take this into account, which is not just, it does not start with, okay, dear programmers, dear IT, please do that. This is the documentation, go ahead and implement that. It starts rather early. And there, I think that you can somehow have an iterative approach where it comes from both sides. So when you have a framework in the group that you can use, you can build on that, you can develop your risk models on real data. And while yes, if you encounter a specific area where you have problems with latency or speed or data, whatever, then you may tweak this. But this is then just one fraction of the effort. And on the other side, try to do everything in other languages proved to be far more effort. Yeah? So for the same code which takes in Python, whatever, 3-4 lines, it's in C++, I don't know how many. Yeah? But I have seen some cases where, let's say, simple tasks have been so tedious. And the point is that from my perspective now, running such a factory, it's a legacy. So you're carrying always this risk that you have a lot of code. Sometimes people are writing things in a duplicate fashion, yeah, because it's not such a, so if you want, it's not such a tradition of using and sharing frameworks maybe. Yeah? There are some which are better, but others maybe not. Oh, another one. I think, hopefully, you have to say when it stops. Yeah, so.
Mike. So maybe the last question. There are a lot of technical things you can overcome. My experience is the most problems are probably in the human space. Do you have any experience about what are the big resistances of people adapting Python? And because usually I have experienced people that use some other systems for a long time, they had sometimes a hard time converting to something new. Did you encounter any of these problems?
To be honest, no. I mean, what we do is we probably do some, let's say, we also evangelize a little bit. So we do information sessions. We had our Python day last year in our own house. So I initiated a Python day where we had, let's say, some good presentations with Eve and Travis presenting there. Eve is there, and let's say this is somehow starting. So we are trying to, if you want, mobilize people by motivating them, not by forcing it. Yeah, and it works. And I think it's a self-propelling momentum. And at least I'm not encountering this problem.